Sharks have always had an evolutionary advantage when it comes to survival. I mean, they know how to beat it. They know the value of patience. They've survived the meteors, the floods, even the Ice Age. From a scientific standpoint, it would be easy to assume that a species, which has withstood millions of years of change, could likely handle anything thrown at it, and for the most part, that'd be correct. But nothing could have prepared them for the drought. Historians say that it started due to a shifting in the rotation of our planet during the early part of the 23rd century. Conspiracists, on the other hand, claimed that an underwater anti-energy missile was tampered with. Environmentalists cited global warming, politicians blamed whoever was currently trending in the polls as an opposer, and atheists blamed God. But one thing all of them could agree on was this: the oceans were receding. By 2347, experts claimed only 40% of the world would still be covered by water. We needed a miracle. What we got was Jonas Sinto. Jonas was born to an affluent family in New Detroit circa October 2365. From an early age, it was clear that he was a savant and was on the fast track for greatness. Then the accident happened. Jonas was 3.5, and his parents had chosen to take him solar sailing near the Alaskan ridges. Everything was supposed to be perfectly safe, but a miscalculation in the firing sequence caused their sailor to crash near the base of the ridge. A search party headed by the Alaskan lifeguard found the remains of Jonas's parents and 5 other passengers about 12 days later. Jonas himself was presumed dead, likely crushed by the waves. But that's not what happened. Instead, the Offlanders found him, a group of nomadic explorers that believed the world's future depended on saving the oceans. Some called them cultists, but they treated Jonas fairer over the next 18 years. When he did learn of his origins, the boy who fell to the sea did only what could be assumed natural for anyone in that situation, and chose to honor his parents and his new life by creating the New Oceans Marina Research Labs in their name. Most people who heard of the resurrected prodigy donating his fortune towards the research of astral aquatics scoffed at the very notion. There was simply no way that Jonas would be able to afford to create a working space station capable of housing millions of underwater life forms. And they would have been right, had it not been for the long trust that he had established with the Offlanders. It should have been unlikely to happen at all, but the nomads didn't care about fame or fortune. All they wanted was their faith to be restored, for the oceans to rise once more. It took 10 years, 9 months, and 12 days. But eventually, the Aquarius was finished in 2398. Jonas made the announcement at the United Nations seminar that the station would launch at the turn of the century. For a world that had ravaged its resources to the point of global starvation and a drop in population by 19%, it was certainly the good news that everyone needed. But whatever hope the Aquarius provided was dashed to pieces on January 7th, 2399. A group of terrorists calling themselves extinctionists sabotaged and hijacked the space station, taking Jonas and 13 scientists who were on duty hostage toward the stars. What relative peace that had once occurred because of Jonas's promise was broken, causing wars to erupt across the planet once more. Worse still, a few weeks later, the station went dark. Rumors quickly spread that the extinctionists had massacred the scientists before offing themselves. That was 20 years ago, and to most, it's become something of an urban legend. The ocean in the sky. The foolish dream to save our world, but not for us. We see the dreams of one man as the only chance to make it into the next century as a species. Ernest T. Valsetto, Chief Executive Officer of the Ager Foundation. The following notes and experiences have been faithfully compiled by our Terran historian, Dr. A.T. Dajan. Departure, July 13th, 2422. Cape Canaveral, Florida, former head of the North American Space Administration. Vincent Redland watched as the young cadet made another round in the simulated treadmill, increasing the gravity density from 0.07 to 0.13. The artificial intelligence by her side made the adjusted calculation in mere seconds, but the human took considerably longer. She's a poor replacement for Dante, Vincent thought, shaking his head and checking the chronosphere again. Launch was in less than a week. There wasn't time for mistakes to be made. The next time the young woman made the lap, Redland raised his hand for her to stop and shut the program down. "Your data sheet betrays your skills, Miss Strom. I was expecting more from you today," Vincent said as the woman left the simulation and caught her breath. "It's been a while since I won those medals," the 20-something former athlete argued. "Even so, should have made the adjustment in your resume. Not that it matters either way. It's not like there are other Olympic swimmers available," Vincent grumbled. "I'll practice 3 times a day if that means I can prove to you that my recommendation from President Dykrast was well-founded," she said defiantly. "I couldn't care less who allowed you to be the part of this expedition or why. What matters to me are the results. So, up your daily regimen to 6, show me progress by next Friday, or I promise I will call your precious sponsor myself and see to it those medals are taken away so fast your head'll spin." Redland snapped back. He knew the words would come off bitter and sharp to the young woman, but this was no time for coddling. The stakes could not be higher. July 17th. Dennis Allen needed to get his head back in the game. The launch was only a few days away. In the short period of time that he had worked for the Coalition, everything had gone to pot as a result. Dennis was starting to think that maybe he was cursed. First, during the Carolina starvation, he lost his son. Then he discovered that his accounts had all been seized by the new Foundation on their claims for repurposing the country. It was a load of crock, but so was most politics in this day and age. Power vacuums existed in almost every corner of the world thanks to the drought. In so many ways, Dennis felt that going to Aquarius would be a godsend in comparison to the madness that he faced every day on Earth. Allen didn't quite understand how it was that Ager Foundation had managed to gather a crew in such a short period of time, but as he made it to the bay on the day before departure, he was starting to get a clearer picture. He saw scattered and frightened individuals from all backgrounds mirroring the same sense of escapism that he longed for. These people were thankful for the American Coalition, even managing to scrounge the parts together to get to Aquarius. It was clear by their determination and anxiety that each of them was prepared to do whatever was necessary to make this work. That was because Aquarius wasn't just about saving the oceans anymore. It had lingered above Earth as a forgotten dream for too long. Dennis could tell each of the crew felt the same way. They had to succeed. They had to save their dying world. Mission Report, July 21st, 2422. Acting Commander Reggie T. Kinsler. I've sent our departure stats to Control, and it appears that we're on schedule to arrive at Aquarius in T-minus 13 hours. The crew is lively. A group of 19 men and women that, under ordinary circumstances, I'm uncertain would be able to work together so cordially. But these past 3 months have been hardly conforming to what would be considered a redundant schedule. We've worked hard, with the limited resources that we had, to finish this project in secret. We couldn't ask for another flummox like what happened with Jonas. It's interesting how I find that my thoughts turn to him as I watch Earth fade away. This world was on the brink of collapse, and this lost child managed to bring hope again to millions of people, even if it turned out to be false. He kept the species going long enough for this to be possible. Aquarius. I don't know much about the place except for what Control has provided us. For all intents and purposes, we'll be landing blind. I provided the blueprints to Jonas's original model to my security detail, 3 men, 1 woman, and informed them that it is quite likely the layout may have changed since its original launch. Our mission is twofold. We scout out the entire station and also determine if any portion of the facility can stand to be used or repurposed for terraforming another world. Control believes that if one of these goals can be achieved by the fall of Solstice, that we can possibly begin a process of selecting people from Earth to live here and make the Aquarius a colony of sorts. It will become more than a vessel for sea life, but also an ark for mankind, to sail us towards the next frontier, whatever that may be. I just hope that I get to play a part in it. Arrival. Picture, if you will, a long tunnel widening and brightening the way a roller coaster might before dipping off into a plummet. The very stars seem reachable. This is how Aquarius presents itself to us. A quiet, frozen paradise capable of being awakened. But some dreams should be allowed to sleep eternally. For when our ship managed to latch onto the eastern outer ring, I couldn't help but to run scans and notice several key systems still operating functionally. We were expecting to find a dead world marred by the remnants of a long-forgotten story. What we found instead was far worse. Commander Kinsler asked for my team to be the first to scout the entry point. Hannes and Tala took the rear while Beckett and I scoured the north hangar bay. To say the place resembled something more biological would probably be an understatement. There was this constant regression that could be seen everywhere we looked. Barnacles and anemones growing wild across scores of metal and steel. It had been encased in the underwater material for so long, the place resembled a trench more than a working facility of any kind. And yet, amid all this natural chaos, a sense of technology also seemed to carry throughout. Functioning electronic equipment, computer systems, and the like. Aquarius was like a slumbering giant, covered in warts, waiting to be woken up. We spent 4 hours searching the entire outer ring and finding more of the same, just abandoned terminals, overgrown hallways, and a disturbing quiet. This place is a tomb, Tala remarked. I reminded all of us that our orders were to keep the comm system quiet. But that was hardly possible, since each step made the tension rise. It was in our final hour that we finally found something that made me question everything. A massive sealed door that led to the inner sanctum of Aquarius. According to Kinsler, it was designed where the space station had 6 outer nodes or rings that circled constantly around the main central arc, and so far that seemed true. But when I scanned the seal itself, I saw something on the other side. A heat signature, like that of a life form, like someone was watching. After 20 years of isolation, I wondered what sort of creature this might be to greet our arrival. It'd be 6 hours later that I found out. Captain's log. Our first night aboard the station did not go as expected. We set up base camp near a blast door the security team had found. Some of my colleagues wanted to rest and adjust to our changing gravity, but the peculiar scratchings and biological takeover that surrounded me on all sides was too great a mystery for me to ignore. It was here that I first met the beings we'll call the settlers of this strange place. For as I gazed upon the markings, I started to understand that they were of human make. The way ancient glyphs were designed to seal away a tomb. A careful configuration, to be sure, but nothing our group of mathematicians couldn't solve in a matter of hours. The seal opened with a hiss and a shudder, pushing out thick foam similar to what you might see rising on the edge of a lake. And on the other side, we were all shocked to see rows and rows of algae, other sea life, growing freely in the dense corridor. One of the older professors, Vincent Redland, hypothesized that the inner atmospheric controls have been adjusted to prevent the water from completely evaporating. It's as though we're walking at the bottom of the ocean as we explored these tunnels. But the real discovery didn't occur until approximately 330 hours. Hannes, the hefter of the security team, was scouting ahead towards the first generator room when we heard a scream. I remember the whole group froze as they heard what sounded like his organs being ripped from his body. Now I saw it, standing there, hunched over him like a bipedal piranha. In some ways, the figure still resembled a human with the same bone structure and gait, but for the most part it was merely a shadow of a person that had undergone, undoubtedly, countless surgeries for the sake of survival here. When it heard us approach, it turned its bulbous head towards us and stretched out its elongated eyes to stare at us the way a hungry predator might. Rows of torn flesh from the security officer hung from its mouth with sharp teeth, and for a moment, I wagered the thing might attack us. Thankfully, Kinsler had his wits about him to use a powerful beam of light to ward off the would-be attacker, and for a moment we regained our senses. I decided that we'll not go any further until we fully determine the state of decay of the Aquarius and send all our data back to the Coalition and to Control to await further instructions. Mission Report, July 24th, 2422. We've been here for a mere 48 hours, and already 2 of our small crew have perished. We were not expecting to be welcomed by anyone here, let alone by hybrid machinations of sea devils. I've managed to get Strom to hack into the limited operations the Aquarius has for an assessment of what's taken place over the past 2 decades. Most of the data has been heavily encrypted, so it may take her time to come to a conclusion. In the meantime, I've sent a dispatch to President Dicrest of the situation. Our assumption to repossess Aquarius as a terraforming colony is no longer an option, and I'm prepared to return to Earth and postpone this mission until we come up with a plan to take out this threat. Update. Some of the analysis from Aquarius' database makes absolutely no sense. Over 30 new life forms have been created here using some sort of mutating algorithm designed by Jonas himself. If I'm understanding my science team correctly, it appears Jonas intended for human evolution to alter along with marine life in some sort of new world order. Was this meant for us to return to Earth and outlive the drought? Other data seems to imply the mutations were tampered with by the extinctionists, who somehow managed to stay on board during the initial hijacking. Pasler, my chief physicist, has speculated that they developed the hybrid humanoids we saw as some sort of virus intended to wipe out the Aquarius crew but still provide new life to the surface. If this is true, it means that they've managed to create a new type of human base around adapting to an environment without the need for oxygen. It'd simply be ironic that the people who wanted to kill us all wind up being our saviors. But if I have anything to say about it, the history books will always remember them as traitors to our species as a whole. Subliminal 7/26/24/22. I'm finding it difficult to keep the small crew's spirits up. Ever since the discovery that there is hostile life aboard the Aquarius, many of our team seems ready to depart, rather than problem-solve the new obstacle. I'll admit at first, I was also thinking that we didn't stand a chance at making it here, but lately we've come to see that the Aquarius itself has accommodated our needs in unexpected ways. The changing environment's making it easier for us to work. You aren't needing our supplies as much as expected. I estimate we could extend our stay for another 2 weeks if Dicrest believes there's still a chance for us to override the main systems. Unfortunately, there's still a large portion of the data that's been corrupted, and Strom told me the only way that we can learn more is by heading deeper into the station. I'll be dispatching the remaining members of our security detail tomorrow to see what they could find. July 27th, 2422. Stasis. The ship is alive. Commander Kinsler has insisted that our success can be achieved by finding the primary controls of the Aquarius, but I'm dubious. Because how exactly do you override a living creature? He made it towards the central node. The largest concentration of marine life can be found here, and that's when I first saw the new life forms that exist in this hellish abyss. Sharks the size of double-decker buses swimming around freely, devouring the skeleton of a whale, using its carcass as some sort of home base for literally hundreds of smaller sharks. The smaller ones in the species remind me of a mix of hammerheads and spearfish with long, sharp noses, twisted teeth. What scared me the most, though, was when we walked through the corridor, most of them slowed their swimming pattern. They watched us, intently curious to see where we were going. And then we heard voices. At first I thought it was only in my own distorted thoughts, like a broken sanity, that I was hearing the incessant chants, but as I looked about the group, I realized all of us were suddenly paralyzed with that singular word that just kept ringing in our heads. Food, 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 food. Strom looked towards the sharks. Couldn't be a form of telepathy, she asked nervously. Before any of us got a chance to speculate, a scream pierced the air. One of our engineers, Janice, was taken by the creatures. I watched in horror as they dragged her towards one of the airlocks and pushed her into the ocean water alongside the myriad of sharks. Kinsler ordered the guards to raise their weapons, and Strom immediately volunteered to rescue her, but it was over in less than 15 seconds. Despite the lightning speed at which the hybrid sharks managed to pull apart Janice's body, tearing her arms and legs from her torso as though she were a toy doll, I remember every vivid detail. Her dead, frightened eyes, the cascade of blood as the sharks worked like a finely crafted singular unit, each one making certain to not get in the way of the other. And above all of it was a throng of music that played out across the sound system of the Aquarius. The dangerous creatures that called this place home were singing praises to this massacre. A minute later, only Janice's skeleton still remained, and I wondered if some of that marine life on the surface of the massive chamber would clean it up as well. I felt my own partner squeeze my hand anxiously. Kinsler announced after about an hour later that he was going to make the suggestion that we leave this place again to the Coalition. Some among our group are already talking about revolting. Revolting if the answer comes back negatively. July 13th, 2422. Dr. Redland has requested that I begin a psychologist evaluation of the remaining members after the trauma we were exposed to a few days ago in the main node. We have returned for now to the safety of our ship and only allowed the security detail to roam the Aquarius. This is a hostile place, unlike any we've ever seen before. I remember questioning the motives of the surface for this strict training, but given what we've dealt with so far, I think it's safe to say we actually didn't prepare me enough. Commander Kinsler is preparing for departure, but we've met with a snag. Once we made it within the Aquarius' hold, it seems the gravitational pull of the rings will not allow us to break free unless we can find a way to shut off the generator. Redland speculates that the extinctionists have likely been guarding the system for quite some time. There's still myriads of questions I have about this entire ecosystem, though. For despite its brutality, I can see that Aquarius is a functioning environment. It thrives, in fact, and each time I venture out, I notice more life flourishing. How is any of this possible? When the humans in charge have devolved into savage life forms. I keep thinking the sharks must serve as a key part of their day-to-day life. Of all the sea creatures we've seen so far, the sharks are the most evolved. The humanoids seem to worship them as gods, and the sharks have even achieved what Mr. Allen called supernatural abilities. I, however, believe there's another portion to this tale that we're not privy to, and I have decided that if we're leaving soon, I'd like to test my hypothesis with or without the commander's permission. It'll be risky, but Tala and Frank have already agreed to help me. The plan is simple, but should we not return, I'll place this record here as a testimony to our actions. Number 1, we'll travel under the hours of morning when the Aquarius seems to be at its most peaceful. Not entirely certain what schedule these things seem to keep, but so far, the time here seems to indicate an 18-hour nocturnal schedule, followed by 6 hours of rest. I believe this is partially due to the rotation of the Aquarius being misaligned with the equator, resulting in longer episodes of darkness, and the beings, both marine and bipedal, have adapted to being active during those periods. Number 2, I'll be diving into one of the smaller nodes near the south portion of the core. The smaller sharks that have only recently bred seem to be kept in a quarantine here, and this will provide me with a chance to capture one without risk of danger from the adults. Number 3, we'll dissect the shark's brain to determine how it's been able to achieve the abilities that it's obtained, and what role of any humans played in their new evolution. I plead to whatever God is still listening that we can achieve this goal. And until then, this is Mary Strong, signing off. Discovery. Log of Dr. Vincent Redland. Our primary marine biologist has sacrificed her life to make an astounding find concerning the hybrid that we've encountered aboard the Aquarius. After spending nearly 2 hours prepping and then another trying to lure one of the smaller hammerhead hybrids towards a portion of the tank, one that's meant for surgical operations, Mary managed to trap a male hybrid, 2 smaller females. During the process, she unfortunately lost her life. The larger adults saw through the ruse, and using their modified fins, they managed to pry open the cage and free the 2 females. The young male died in the process as the adults also lodged a part of their spearhead into the lower abdomen. Dennis thinks the adult was trying to prevent us from salvaging the body. Stram insists that we focus on saving the specimen rather than her, as one of the other adults grabbed the hold of her leg and dragged her down towards the murky waters below. I wish I knew how best to express her bravery, but I could say now it's not in vain. Me and 3 other volunteers have succeeded in dissecting the shark's body fully and come to a startling conclusion. It would seem these sharks are fused with artificial intelligence of a sort, designed to modify their brains and provide them cognitive abilities superior to even their human hosts, and their brains have been enhanced to triple their original size. Dennis says that he believes this accounts for the shark's telepathy, also why the humanoids seem to worship them. It's a hive mind mentality. These are alphas here. The humans have become like worker bees. It was a stunning and shocking revelation that made us all question God himself. Fears gripped the few of us that remain. With little over half of our ship crew gone, I worry that we may not even be able to return to Earth to warn others of the dangers here. Aquarius is indeed a living, breathing world. From what I've seen so far, it's clearly in opposition to the restoration that we're trying so hard to achieve. It's death incarnate itself. Vincent Redland, Chief Physician. Supplemental information. The chambers to the west of the docking bay were the first that began to flood. The crew of the small Endeavor that had managed to survive for a few weeks aboard the Aquarius were still naive enough to believe that the incident was accidental. They didn't want to believe that the creatures they had encountered, which had ripped them apart and used them as fish food, were also smart enough to end them all. It was obvious that the flooding was meant to end the long stalemate between the 2 groups, and the sharks, which were normally sealed off, were allowed to roam free. Their sense of smell was increased, allowing them the chance to find any runners in less than a minute. Commander Kinsler managed to set a few underwater charges that pulled back the larger species trying to attack, but it was only a temporary delay. The sharks were smart enough that they knew when to expect the charges. The shark could heal their wounds. Some would be stagnant for hours, drifting amidst the flooded corridors like pieces of torn wood. Then slowly they would recover, even with the most brutal harm coming to their bodies. These creatures could adapt to anything. All the while, the worshippers chanted and watched. pleased that the small sacrifices were enough to appease their larger sharks. Kinsler sent out a final message to NASA and the Coalition, begging them to blow Aquarius from the sky. Anything to prevent more madness from spreading. Then the waters pushed in, covering him with a surge as powerful as 50 elephants, and those who came to Aquarius were gone forever. Assessment. The data we received from Aquarius was perhaps the most frightening that I'd ever read in my life. To imagine these poor folks struggling to breathe and fighting against what sounded like monsters was shocking to say the least. In other parts, horrifying. We planned a memorial service for the unfortunate victims on August 13th, which was attended by well over 300 family members and friends. And afterward, all of us listened to the emergency broadcast from the Coalition. I'll see to it that their efforts to save our species are not in vain. Each and every piece of data collected from the Ager Foundation will be assessed by a team of experts over the next several months. We're going to spend as much time as necessary going forward. Myself and other members of the Council still believe that the resources and technology available on Aquarius are the best chance humanity has for a stable future. If that means that we must send up a dozen more operations to secure the facility, then so be it. We have full confidence that our men and women will do everything in their power to achieve this dream. We're going to do this. We're going to win. Over the next few weeks, President Dicrest implemented several new policies to prepare those involved with the Foundation for attempting diplomatic procedure with the inhabitants of Aquarius. According to the charter he developed, the beings on board the space station were no less human than any other culture on the planet Earth. This included the hybrid sharks that were discovered. Dicrest insisted that we needed to do everything in our power to either come to terms with the superior evolutionary society that was discovered on Aquarius, or else further division would develop between the surface and the isolated abyss. I cannot in good faith continue to support such an action when people's lives are going to be sacrificed for something that could destroy us as being separate from the animals. My colleagues have countered that I am opposed to progress in humanity. Nothing further could be true. But at what point do we concede defeat to beings from the depths? How many more volunteers will we take back? How many volunteers will fight to take back Aquarius? Instead, I feel that replicating the technology Jonas invented here on Earth is the key to our survival, so I'll be taking my leave of this place and pray in good faith they see my reasons are solely for the betterment of our whole species rather than wasting resources. God forgive me for the dreams that we're conjuring, for I fear that both are leading towards true extinction. Ernest T. Volsetto, Chief Executive Officer of the Ager Foundation. Conclusion. Private logs of President Dicrest, October 24, 22. My team has estimated by the year of 2531 there will be no surface water remaining on Earth. Our options, such as they are, have come limited to one. We must surrender to Aquarius and beg they allow at least a select few of us to join their ranks. The ocean and the sky is the only viable option for preservation of species. The announcement of our dying atmosphere and dwindling resources has already caused unrest in 19 countries. At this rate, we may all die before even bowing down to these hybrids. I can't help but feel guilty for the part that I've played in these grand follies. I also fear that if the truth came out regarding the mutation on the Aquarius, how our government had a role to play in the original hijacking, at a point, I'd either be deemed a savior of mankind or become a martyr for further evolution. I am uncertain how I review further communications with the newest team to arrive on Aquarius, but it scarcely matters anymore. Whether we live or die, our species is doomed to be slaves to the powers of Mother Nature. For those of you guys that like getting cozy while listening to stories, I want to let you know about Etsy.com/shop/ivory-monocle-tea. That's my wife's tea shop. She sells hand-blended teas. There's creepypasta-based teas if you want to get one that's a flavor that you like, or there's MrCreepyPasta tea, which happens to be a tea that I drink fairly often. You can also ask for a dabbing sticker. If you ask her for a dabbing sticker, you get a special one that I made for her to use on that jar, and she told me not to use it. So I like telling you guys to go ask her, because then you get a special one, because then she's forced to admit that I made a really good concept, even though it's very silly. Etsy.com/shop/ivorymonocletea. A big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Jakob Fenske, Stephanie Butler, Jordan Humble, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, William Wellington, Emma, Brenna Crow, LaQueda Canizales, Smiley the Psychotic, Dante, Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, Bastion Beefcake, M, Jesus Corneo, Yargul, Crownable, Amber Clark, Jay Kearns, Dakota Lane Whetstone, Himbo Jerry, Crusader Chocobo, Adamarius, Estebean, Nate Cull, Our Minsect Time, Xylobones, Angelus, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Levita Galvin, That Creepy Chick, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Carolinian, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Ika Limchalk, Dirty Diver 030, Matt Bach, Voice of Sand, Spikeamel, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, William King, Darth Miver, Sashi Suzaku, Croconut 509, Stricket, Freddy Krueger, Lisa Cottrell, Hades Nephew, Acid System, Mog, Kiwi the Sloth, Fester's Lampshade, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. To all of you guys, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for being a huge support to me. Thank you to everybody who's in the description down below, and thank you to everyone who can even support $1 just on Patreon to help keep the content coming.